All right, so let's take a look at notes 2.6, solving word problems with linear equations. This is about halfway through page 7, and this is probably the toughest concept for the unit. So take your time with the video, ask questions if you don't understand something, rewind, pause, take control of your learning so you can make sure you really understand what's going on, okay? So steps to solving word problems. The first step we're going to do is we're going to underline or highlight all given information, okay? Then we're going to determine what we want to find out, and I strongly suggest that you circle it so you can make sure you actually answer the question, okay? Next, you're going to draw a picture, but only if you need to. Only draw a picture if it's helpful to you. Step 4 is to write let statements, and you need to ask yourself, how many things do I not know? Please put a big box around this piece right here. So many people will skip this step because they think they don't need to do it, but this is the most crucial step in the process when you're trying to solve word problems. If you do step number 4, the rest of your problem is going to be so much easier to solve, okay? Step number 5 is to write your equation. Step number 6 is to solve it. And step number 7 is to check it. And when you're done, you have to ask yourself, does this answer make sense? So let's take a look at how to apply all these steps to question number 1. Step number 1 says to underline or highlight all given information. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to read through it and I'm going to underline all the information that's important here. Sarah has a brother who is 3 years younger than she is. So 3 years younger than she is really important. Okay? The sum of their ages is 23. So sum is important, and I'm going to write myself a note that sum means to add. Okay? And the sum is 23. How old are Sarah and her brother? Okay? So I figured out my given information. So I'm done with step 1. Step 2 says to determine what you want to find out. Well, what do I want to find out? I want to find out how old Sarah and her brother are. So I'm going to circle how old are Sarah and her brother. Those are the 2 things that I want to figure out. Step 3 says to draw a picture if you need to. I could draw a picture of Sarah and her brother, but this isn't going to help me solve my problem, so I'm going to skip that step. Okay? Step 4 says to write your let statements. This is the most important thing. Ask yourself, how many things do I not know? So when I look at this problem, I realize, well, there are 2 things I don't know. I don't know how old Sarah is, and I don't know how old her brother is. So I'm going to write 2 let statements because there are 2 things I don't know. Okay, so let's go ahead and start getting our let statement set up. So my first let statement is going to be written here, and my second let statement is going to be written underneath it. Now, what does a let statement do? It defines a variable. So you're going to let a variable be represent a certain unknown in my problem. So right here, I don't know Sarah's age and I don't know her brother's age, but her brother is based on her age. So I have to start with Sarah. So you start with who everybody is based on, or what everything is based on. So since I don't know Sarah's age, we're going to say let Sarah's age equal, and then you can call it any variable you want. I'll call it X. Okay? And then we don't know her brother's age, so we're going to say let her brother's age. I don't know what it is, but I'm not going to call it Y. I'm going to call it something based on the information that's given to me. I know that Sarah's brother is 3 years younger than she is, so I'm going to take her age and I'm going to subtract 3 because I know that he's 3 years younger. So I subtract 3 if it's 3 years younger. Okay? There were 2 things I didn't know, so I wrote 2 let statements, so I'm done with that step. Okay? Step 5 says to write your equation. Well, I haven't used this piece of information right here. The sum of their ages is 23. So I'm going to take Sarah's age, which is X, and I'm going to take her brother's age, which is X minus 3, and it says that I need to find the sum of their ages, so I'm going to add them together, and it's equal, means equals, it equals 23. Okay? Step 6 says to solve your equation. Now that we've gotten to this point, the rest is easy. It's just a regular equation to solve. So let's go ahead and solve our equation. So x plus x is 2x. So I get 2x minus 3 equals 23. Then I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So I get 2x equals 26. Divide both sides by 2, which means that x is 13. Well, now that I know what x is, I'm going to go back into my let statements and I'm going to figure out this information. So if Sarah is 13, if x is 13, then her brother is 13 minus 3, which is 10. Okay? So therefore, I can say Sarah is 13 years old and her brother is 10 years old. Okay? But step 7 says to check my answer. I want to make sure my answer makes sense. Well, is Sarah 3 years older than her brother? Yes. Is the sum of their ages 23? Yes. So it works. Now you might be able to figure this out in your head, but you need to do this using algebra, using equations, because some of these other problems that we get to in the future that are more complicated, you won't be able to figure it out in your head. You're going to need to use those equations. Okay? All right, so let's take a look at question number 2, and we're going to follow the exact same steps. So step number 1 asks us to underline key information. So let's go ahead and do that. We know that Briar has quarters and dimes in his pocket. That's important. The number of quarters is 3 less than 2 times the number of dimes. If he has a total of $1.65, okay, so we don't need the cents here, but $1.65. So he has a total of $1.65. How many pennies and dimes does he have in his pocket? So we want to figure out how many pennies he has and how many dimes he has. So then step 2 is to identify what I want to figure out. I'm done with that. Step 3 says to draw a picture. Drawing a picture isn't really necessary, so let's go ahead and go to step number 4. Step number 4 says to write your let statements, and you're going to ask yourself, how many things do I not know? Well, when I look at this, there are 2 things I don't know. I don't know how many quarters there are, and I don't know how many dimes there are. So I'm going to figure out both of those things. So therefore, I need to write 2 let statements. Now, the question is, which one goes first? Well, if it tells us the number of quarters is 3 less than 2 times the number of dimes, it means that the number of quarters is based on the number of dimes, which means I need to know the dimes first since quarters are based on dimes. So we're going to say let the number of dimes equal D, because we don't know how many dimes there are. Okay, so now we're going to say the number of quarters. Well, the number of quarters is going to be equal to 3 less than 2 times the number of dimes. So how do I write 2 times the number of dimes? I would say 2D, okay? And then how do I write 3 less than that? I'm going to write minus 3, okay? So now that I've written my let statements, now I need to write my equation. And this is another piece of information that we haven't used. There's a total of $1.65. Well, there are D dimes, but each dime is worth 10 cents, right? So I'm going to say 10 times D. Okay? And then here we have quarters, and each quarter is 25 cents. So I'm going to add 25 times 2D minus 3. Now, why am I multiplying? Well, if I said if you have 5 dimes, how much money is that? You would do 5 times 10, which is 50 cents. So you take the number of dimes and you multiply it by how much it's worth. Here I'm taking the number of dimes and I'm multiplying it by how much it's worth, which is 10. Here I'm taking the number of quarters, I'm multiplying it by how much it's worth, which is 25 cents. Okay? Now be really careful though, because if you're going to use 10 instead of 0.10, because remember a dime is really worth 10 cents like that, and if you're going to use 25 instead of 0.25, this right here should not be 1.65. You should use 165. Okay, so now that I've written my equation, I can go ahead and solve it. So let's go ahead and solve it. Distribute the 25 through, and you end up getting 50D minus 75, and then just copy the rest of your equation down. Okay, and then I have some like terms. So what's like each other? Well, this 10D and this 50D is 60D. So put those together. You get 60D. Copy the rest of the equation down. Add 75 to both sides. These minus 75s cancel out, so I get 60D equals 240. Divide both sides by 60, therefore D is equal to 4. Well, if D is 4, I'm going to go back into my let statement and I'm going to figure out how much I have of each thing right here. Well, if D is 4, that means that I have 4 dimes, okay? And then if D is 4, I can figure out the number of quarters by doing 2 times, instead of D, I can replace a 4 minus 3, so I get 8 minus 3, which is 5. So then I can write my let statement and I can say, therefore, Briar has 4 dimes and 5 quarters. Okay, and that's my final answer. But let's do our check to make sure it's right. So 4 dimes means 4 times 10 cents, which is 40 cents. Okay, and then 5 quarters means 5 times 25 cents, which is $1.25, right? So we'll say 40 cents is 0.40. When you add those together, sorry, $1.25, you end up getting the $1.65 that you want. So to check, it works. All right, we have one more question for this video. So let's take a look and see what happens in number 3. It says when two opposite sides of a square, so it's important to know that we've got opposite sides of a square, are each increased by 3 centimeters, and the other two opposite sides, so the other two opposite sides, it's important that there's 2 of them, are decreased by 1 centimeter, you end up with a rectangle with a perimeter of 40. Okay, find the length of a side of the original square. So I've completed steps 1 and 2. I've identified what I've underlined key information and I've identified what I need to know. Step 3 says to draw a picture if necessary, and a picture is necessary here. So we start off with a square. So we start with a square, and I don't know each side, so I'm going to call, I don't know what each side is, so I'm going to call each side X. But then what ends up happening is my square becomes a rectangle, okay? So if my square becomes a rectangle, how does it happen? Well, one side is increased by 3. So that means that this X right here becomes X plus 3, okay? And then the other side right here is decreased by 1. So this X right here becomes X minus 1. Okay, so once I've done that, now I know the new sides of my rectangle. Now drawing a picture here is enough, it's sufficient, because I've labeled my length and my width in my picture. That's like writing my let statement. So I'm done with my let statement, so I can go ahead and write my equation. Well, the piece of information I haven't used yet is the fact that the perimeter is 40. So how do I find perimeter? I add up all the sides. But be really careful. Don't forget that this right here, we have another X plus 3, and we have another X minus 1. So let's go ahead and add up all of our sides. So all my sides, I'll start with this one, X minus 1 plus X minus 1. I also have X plus 3 plus X plus 3. And when I put it all together, I know that my perimeter is 40. Okay? So once I've done that, I can go ahead and solve my equation. So X plus X plus X plus X, I've got 4X. Okay? Minus 1 becomes negative 2. Plus 3, so negative 2 plus 3 is 1. 1 plus 3 is 4. Now I've just got a regular equation to solve. Subtract 4 on both sides, so you get 4x equals 36. Divide both sides by 4, you get x equals 9. So now, what is one side of the original square? It's 9, because right here I know that x is 9. So I can say, therefore, one side of the original square is 9. Okay? And that's my answer. All right, again, if you have questions, come see me for help. I'll be more than happy to help you out. This is not an easy concept, okay? This is it for video 2.6. Video 2.7 will start after this right here, so you can watch that for the next assignment, okay?